Our keynote facilitator for this workshop is Mr. Monis Rahman, co-founder and CEO of Dukan e-commerce.
First of all, I'd like to really thank Hamza Hashmi and the Terabis team. This event was an idea after we saw the circular of State Bank and realized how important it is to hold an event like this. But it's just been amazing how Hamza and the team have executed on this and assembled all of these amazing people in one room. So a round of applause for Hamza Hashmi and the Terabis team, please. I am very lucky to have on stage with me Khurram from EasyPesa. Many of you know him. These are, in terms of SME, supply chain loans and lending, probably one of the most experienced individuals in the country. Whoever's in the lending field knows of him and knows of the wonderful things he's doing. You'll learn a lot from him after I brief you on sort of the landscape and a tech infrastructure needed for this. And Dr. Imran Usmani, I think every one of us have heard of him and the wonderful work he's doing in Islamic finance. Most of us have engaged with him and his organization for advice. So with that, I'm going to begin. The topic at hand is digital SME and retail payment digitization. And this is a bit of a workshop, a bit of an overview. So let me just start. It's been very heartening to see the common themes have been reiterated over and over again. It makes my job a lot easier, although I seem a bit redundant because I'm going to repeat some information. But it's showing that there's a consensus of where things are going. So 170,000 of 4.5 million SMEs, and the numbers we're hearing, it's probably 6.5 million. It's larger, 3.5%, maybe 2%, whatever the number is, it's incredibly low. 40% of the GDP we've heard over and over again, 80% of the non-agricultural workforce, but this is not a unique problem to Pakistan. IFC estimates that 65 million SMEs, 40% of MSMEs in developing countries have unmet financing needs of $5.2 trillion every year. So it's not just Pakistan, it's all over the emerging world. Same issue. And just to highlight this a little bit, there are incredible analogies, which I think you'll be hearing about as we go through the day in other geographies, which are so analogous to what's happening in Pakistan, supply chain ecosystem, payment ecosystem, and the rush to implement supply chain financing. Just these markets alone, you're seeing about 170 million SMEs and the market size of almost $1 trillion just here alone. And there's a lot of analogies between these markets, but let's stick to what we're doing in Pakistan. I just want to illustrate that we're not unique in where we are right now in our ambitions. So, supply chain, what's a supply chain? I'm just going to go through this very quickly. I know everybody understands what supply chains are, but I want to highlight the complexities in supply chain and then systematically work through those and figure out how we can credit score and enable loans through the supply chain. Start at the top with the manufacturer, the supplier, the producer of goods. The producer of goods gets the products into the market via distributors. Often it's a master distributor, then a sub-distributor. These are hierarchical in nature. And the distributors have a very interesting offline workflow, which is fairly complex and very inefficient. Inside the distributor's shop, we see there's a warehouse, there's inventory, he has order bookers, they go on field routes. They have a salesman who goes and does a delivery, who does cash payments, their returns. This is all offline, it's happening on the back of a napkin. They're reconciling on some laptop inside a warehouse. One day later, the supply goes out, payment is often cash. There's a big burden in that cash. And then it finally goes to the retailer who waits for the order booker, who runs out of cash and therefore cannot buy anything else. So if you're not in with the retailer as a distributor early in the day, aapki sale nahi hogi. Ye sari cheezein isme hain, and this is a massive opportunity. It's complex, it's offline, it's disconnected, and it's undocumented. And I think as we heard in the last panel as well, Amr Ali Saab was talking about this, and he said that it needs an ecosystem. He's absolutely right. There has to be an ecosystem that's interconnected, otherwise we cannot score this undocumented transaction chain. So what types of loans are there in the supply chain? Well, you can go up and down the supply chain. You can give loans to the distributors You can give loans to retailers. You can give loans to FMCGs. And there are various types of loans that we can give throughout the supply chain. I've just highlighted a few of them. I think you've heard of a lot of them. I'll just go through them quickly. It's purchase order financing. Basically, you're providing funds to a supplier based on the downstream orders they have. This means you must know the volume of downstream orders. And again, we're talking about an undocumented economy. But if you have granularity into downstream orders, it's easier to give the supplier finance because you know how much money is going to come back in. Their inventory financing, I think we know about this. You basically give loans and you secure those loans against inventory. Again, it's securitized against inventory. There's receivable financing, invoice discounting, where there are loans against outstanding payments. We also know this quite well. It's common. And supplier financing, reverse factoring, which I find very interesting. This is, the loan is initiated by the buyer, the store, and the money is given to the supplier, but it's claimed back from the buyer again. And I'm going to speak more about this because this has worked really well for us in Pakistan. And I think it's very instructive. And of course, there's distributor financing, which is basically the largest loans that are going to distributors to buy supplies from the FMCGs and manufacturers. So this is a rough sort of a map of the kind of loans you can do in the ecosystem, but you'll see that all of these require data. They require reliable data because this is informal. And so when we talk about technology, what we're really talking about is building technology that allows us to track transactions throughout the ecosystem. Starting from the consumer, paying the retailer, paying the distributor paying the manufacturer, and not just paying them, but having visibility on what they're paying for, what is the basket that they're buying. And once you have a combination of these, I know it sounds like a holy grail, I've made it sound so simple, but it's such a complex problem to solve. Once you have these, it actually becomes fairly easy and low risk to score. Then the other problem is, well, these are small fragmented loans. How do we scale this? Human intervention, going out and meeting them on the field. So all of these are challenges that technology solves, and I'll be speaking a little bit about that. So here are some learnings. For supply chain financing, for retailer lending, there are a couple of things that turn out to be more important than others that really move the needle. So I'll start with KYC and establishing a business owner. One of the biggest areas of fraud, surprisingly, is if you don't do your KYC properly and a loan is given to a retail merchant, but it turns out that the person you gave the loan to is not really the owner. It's his brother, or he's not even affiliated, and the field sales team has played a trick on you. So establishing identity of retail store merchants and ensuring that they represent those stores actually is one of the biggest things we can do. And I'll be speaking about how we can accomplish that, but that's critical. The next thing is proof of payment. So once transactions are going, you're using those transactions on retail merchant networks to figure out what is the buying capacity, what is the turnover, what is the margin that this retailer is able to produce. So a proof of payment, if you have a payment going through a digital channel, cash has moved. It's not just an invoice that you're examining. This is real money that's moving. The third is understanding the basket of goods. What's being bought? And for example, if you ask for a loan because you want to place a bet on a betting site, it's much higher risk than if you ask for a loan because you want to buy stock on which you make 15% and you turn it over every 3 days and you've been doing it for 3 years. It's a very low risk loan. So understanding what you're using the money for, what the money is being used, the consideration, and being able to, last point, finance specific SKUs based on data and based on history makes these loans far more reliable and less risk. If I can track what retailers are buying, how often, how frequently, for a period of time, I can finance just that basket. And the money that we talked about earlier is going directly to the supplier. It's not going into the hands of the retailer. And it's going for stock that he's been purchasing, she's been purchasing for a long time. And we've seen evidence that they're able to turn over that stock, and we understand the margin on it. So now it's just economics. You've done the KYC, the economics work. The retail merchant's always going to pay you back because they're making a multiple on the money that they get at the cost they get it. So this is the magic. It's not rocket science. Why do people repay you? Because it's in their self-interest. Because they get another loan and they buy more and they grow. And you're seeing about a 30% uplift once you put these loans down to the retail merchant network. So it's big. So everything everybody has said has been absolutely spot on. Now the key is, in order to do this, you need documentation. You need that trail going from top to bottom, which we don't have. So the lack of documentation up and down the supply chain makes it slow, difficult, and expensive because you have to verify everything manually. And this is why nobody gives them loans. The basket size is small, they're fragmented, it's not interesting, it's way too much work. And we still don't do a good job scoring because we don't have reliable data. So what do? Dukan builds digital banking software and e-commerce infrastructure to connect retailers, distributors, and manufacturers to embedded financial services. And like was spoken on the other panel, I think Amr Ali Saab again spoke about this. The banking industry was invented ages ago. It almost seems absurd today to go drive a distance, take money out of my wallet, put it into a bank branch, drive away, and when I need that money, drive back again and grab that money and use it and pay a fee for it. So the banking ecosystem infrastructure was not built for embedded finance. And where banking services naturally belong are directly in the transaction flow, when you're ordering, when you're about to pay. That's where it naturally belongs. You don't want to switch an app and go someplace else and do 5 or 6 other things, because the other problem that's created is that the data is fragmented. My purchase data is happening on this app. I'm buying from here through an e-commerce app from Unilever or another manufacturer. The data isn't synced, therefore I cannot do the things that I just spoke to you about on the previous slide. So it has to be interconnected. The ecosystem has to be interconnected. And sort of that's what we do. So we create white label stacks that we provide to banks and other providers. We're really hitting a lot of scale with EasyPesa. The EasyPesa's team here, they've done an amazing job. A round of applause for them. The Karobar app that they launched is really scaling very, very fast on retail networks with distributors. Loans are flying. It's a frictionless experience. So if you want to learn a little bit about what was done, I think this is a great team to speak to over here in the front. So we spoke about various pieces of this supply chain, right? It seems like a very, I'm going to rotate over here a little bit. It seems like a very tough problem to solve. So the pieces of our chain, the pieces of our software stack, this is technology now. You know, it starts, I'm going to start at the bottom of this. It starts with the consumer. So today in Pakistan, State Bank has launched RAS P2M. We've heard about it. I've got some sound boxes up there, QR codes, scan them, get instant voice notification, payments made, no need to open an app and wait for internet to spin. I'll speak about that in a bit. Money comes in, the retailer gets some money in a digital form. So now there's digital cash into a wallet. This is big, because one of the problems in lending is digitally collecting the cash and not having to physically go and get paper cash. Now with this cash in, not only can you digitally collect your loans, but the retailer is now able to pay the distributor through a digital channel. That was pillar number 2, evidence of payment. I know what he's bought. I know that the payment has been made. Those rails are laid. So that's where we start at the bottom. We can now score retailers based on their income from consumers through P2M, RAS, QR code transactions, which I think are going to be a game changer, as we spoke about earlier. Iske baad, where does that money land once you pay? It has to land into a banking app. So the retailer, when it's scanned, gets a banking app, but that banking app has to let him do more than just collect payments and pay the money onward. That retail app, this is the digital banking app for retail merchants. This is where he orders his supply. This is where he pays the merchant. This is where he gets credit based on the footprints that he's leaving in there. So this is a very important piece of our stack. And then you have the distribution management ERP. The distribution network of Pakistan I spoke about, it's fairly offline. It's very complex. They work on the back of envelopes and napkins, the order bookers, whoever knows how FMCGs work. And by the way, it works the exact same way in Africa. I was just in Ghana, same thing. Indonesia, same thing. So this is a common problem that we're talking about. So we have a distribution ERP that lets us digitize distribution operations, payment collections, inventory tracking, order booking, all real time. So now we have this data on a digital stack going all the way up to the distributor. And finally, you have the FMCG, which has accounts in commercial banks and large banks that are dealing with their distribution networks. And they have complex invoicing, demand notes, reconciliation, workflow management, and payment, which is happening through banking rails, but it's not being captured. Payment and what the payment was made for. Both of them have to be captured in order to score. And there's no reason why we cannot add that onto the banking rails. And that was the third piece of what I was speaking about. So this is our stack. It goes up and down the supply chain. And let me figure out how to go backwards here. That work? Yes, that works. So the top is the transactional banking portal. So our software stack stitches all of this together, interconnects them with a unified wallet, so you're able to track all the way up and down both income and expenses of everybody in the supply chain. All of this is live, by the way. This isn't just theory. This stuff works. So why do this? Well, we heard some amazing people on stage speak about all of the reasons to do this, and they make a lot of sense. But when you drill down to the supply chain, you'll see it makes a lot of sense for everybody in the supply chain. It makes sense for the bank. The banks get accounts across the supply chain from the retailer, from the distributor, FMCG. All those transactions are flowing through the bank's rails. It earns float, transaction fees. And once this data is flowing through banking rails, it's able to be credit scored, and you can lend against it. When you lend against it, it's far more profitable than the transaction fees that I think are currently being enjoyed. It's more than the float. And more importantly, banks have a center stage now in this new economy which is being created. And that's critical. FMCGs is very obvious. They get instant payments from distributors. It's a big pain point from FMCGs. The movement of cash, the delay in getting payments from distributors, all of this really adds up. It's a capital-intensive industry. So getting instant digital payments is a really big win. This is one of the reasons FMCGs are very eager to work with banks, and they say, help me solve this problem. That's where it starts. But not only that, but once this money is starting to flow through their rails, then you can give credit to their distributors. Another problem, because they're tying up capital with their distributors, or their distributors are locked in with their capital. They all want to get their capital out, and these loans are very reliable, and therefore they're not growing. So distributors, obviously, it's also, they're able to pay FMCGs through a digital channel. They're able to collect money from their retail merchants through a digital channel, which means they can pay faster upstream. It all flows upstream. And they're able to get the bank to finance basket purchases that are being credit scored by banks. So now a bank is picking up the burden of the financing. Retailers are getting loans. They're buying more from the distributor. Distributors are getting loans. They're buying more from the supplier. And the cash flow cycle just spins. And retailers, obviously, they get a one-stop app. Retailers, they have 5 or 6 apps. They do some things here. They do another thing there. But banks haven't captured their use cases and giving them good reasons to stick around. There isn't really a good reason to stick around with a bank as a retailer right now. Until they connect their supply chain, they give them lending, they allow them to pay their distributors, they allow them to earn extra money. And the moment you do that, the value proposition for the whole ecosystem is very strong. One of the other themes that we talked about has to be interconnected. We can interconnect to each other. We must interconnect to each other. We have great people here, and I think one of the things that we should all leave with is that this can only happen if everybody does this together and we interconnect our software stacks and we collaborate. The faster we do that, the cleaner the data, the more money everybody makes, and the faster these SMEs grow. So it's about collaboration. It's about integrating the ecosystem from top to bottom. So just a pictorial representation of our intercept points here. This is supply chain. You have a transactional portal that allows manufacturers to invoice and collect payments from distributors. You can credit score that. We've got a credit scoring engine there. We plug into LMSs. You can instantly start to give loans against the payments from distributors to FMCGs. Those are large quantum loans. One layer down, there's a distribution management system, so distributors can go online and they can now start getting orders directly through an online, offline app. Their operations are streamlined, and now, because they're on this stack, their retailers get loans, which is very valuable to them, and they get digital payments upstream. The retail merchants, I think the real star of the whole show is this retail merchant banking app, which I think is very critical, that allows those retail merchants to expose a RAS P2M QR code, allows them to get cash in, allows them to pay up. This becomes the center spoke of the entire ecosystem. And then, of course, on the consumer side, the ability to pay through a digital channel. These are more details on sort of what each pieces of the stack does, but it's a very elaborate stack, and it's all interconnected. Now, if there's a distribution management system that's used by another manufacturer, you can integrate with that here. If there's a banking app that's used by them, you can integrate that here. The key is to integrate everything so you have visibility of the data up and down the supply chain, and you plug it into your credit scoring engine, and you're able to give instant loans, disperse them through a digital channel, free cost, do KYC through a digital channel, you've opened a bank account, do collections through a digital channel because those retail merchants are getting cash in through these, through QR codes, through these sort of sound boxes, which I know a lot of us are now working very hard to get into the network. Now, in order to do this, there's lots of software needed, right? So we spoke a bit about the transactional banking portal, the sort of things that this needs to do in order to solve the problem of credit scoring distributors so they can get loans to buy from FMCGs. This is that transactional portal for the supply chain. So it's doing a lot of things here, but it plugs into the banking system seamlessly through APIs. This is the distribution ERP. Now, this is very complex. I think we spoke about all the offline pieces, and I've spent numerous hours with distributors in their warehouses and their storekeepers and their order bookers. So these are the essential pieces. The order booker, like you'll see there's a picture of an envelope on the left side. This is actually a real picture of an order booker after his routes that he goes to the warehouse and says to the key punch operator, these are my orders. They enter it in some system. They don't even know if they have inventory at that point. So this stack integrates the inventory, key punch operator, cashier, storekeeper, delivery man. So everybody is now interconnected. We have very clean data, and we have data of payments from retailers, as well as the basket, what actually they're buying. So now you're able to credit score all of that as well. And then finally, this is a retail merchant super app. I think this is going to be the centerpiece if we want to crack this puzzle, and probably the hardest piece, because everybody's avoiding going down to the retail merchant level. They're small, they're informal, they're very hard work, small loan sizes. So having a digital app in which you are reliably capturing what they're doing, especially the relevant signals for your digital scoring, is essential. And that's what the retail super app does. It has a built-in pause, so they can tap on glass, they can process a Visa card or a MasterCard, it's built in. The caveat here is only 25% of retailers have the NFC needed to do this, but it comes out of the box, so they can now accept credit card payments. RAS QR comes naturally out of this. This is integrated to the rails of the bank. It can expose a RAS P2M QR. We can connect these sound boxes to it instantly because all of the software layers needed to manage these terminals and connect them and credit score them are already a part of the stack. So day one, you can plug in any sound box from any manufacturer you want, and you can start credit scoring that retailer just on incoming transactions. Once that money is in, the retailer can buy stock from the distributor. You can connect the distributor through this, through the other layers I mentioned. They can get digital loans. They can participate in committees. They can repay those loans. They can sell top-ups, bill payments, virtual goods, and they can do fund transfers. This is what retail merchants need. So we need to start thinking about them, their specific use cases, and integrating financial services embedded in the whole chain where we capture our data. And finally, this is the last piece of the stack, which I'll speak to you about. And let's see if I can make this work. So a lot of us are working on ROS P2M QR codes. We're working on how to put them up into retail. And it ends up, there's a really big stack around this. I'm going to just show you a transaction here. So this is an example of a sound box here.
दुकान बॉक्स पर 456 रुपए मौसूल हुए.
So why is this interesting? Well, we already had the ROS P2M QR. Why it's interesting, this is a nuanced point. I just want everybody to appreciate this. This is an internet speaker. It costs about $12 after you get your duties and everything in, probably like $18, $20. Why is this important? Because this costs so much less than a pause machine, $300, $400. And the biggest thing, and last panel they spoke about this, is how do you reconcile your payments? You're paying somebody's Easy Paisa, Jazz Cash wallet, it's probably somebody else, such a Agai payment, screenshot, bhejo, it takes time to do it. As I'm working on my countertop, I'm the only employee, as I'm selling and dealing, I know you owe me 340 rupees, you pay it, awaz aa gayi mujhe. I move on. And this has been tremendously successful in China, it's been tremendously successful in India with UPI, and it's going to be tremendously successful in Pakistan. It's a nuanced case. It doesn't mean you have to have a sound box, you can just scan a QR code. But these small nuances, like how long it takes a retailer to open up their phone, check if the transaction has come when he has a line of people waiting, this makes all the difference in usability. So the last part of our stack is this entire layer of a terminal management system, which you can manage your devices, retail IDs, map them back to the bank accounts, and have this MQTT server. I know I'm talking about a technical terminology, but you need this entire stack in order to have a unified acceptance from your devices and your QR codes. And why is that important? Because if it's not unified, if you buy sound boxes from one vendor and he says, use my TMS, my terminal management system from my Chinese vendor, and you buy another sound box from somebody else and they give you another software, now you have to reconcile across all of these softwares, it defeats the purpose. So I think it's very critical for the financial institution to have centralized terminal management systems and MQTT servers that everything talks to. It gives you a central point to credit score those incoming transactions, which I think are going to be very low-hanging fruits for the entire industry. So these are the various components of the stack. They're stitched together. We've integrated about 9 manufacturers from China. So we said we shouldn't be reliant on just one. So we've customized firmware, it speaks Urdu, and you can customize an infinite number of these. It's not where you buy the sound box from, it's a commodity product, it's how you connect it back into your sort of software platform. So this is the technology stack through which you're getting data, that you're credit scoring, you're creating your rules engine on it, and you are dynamically, instantly dispersing, credit scoring, KYCing, and collecting. This has never been possible in history before. All of these tools are live now, they're available in the market, and it's just a matter of us and our imaginations to scale this, because we can really make a dent in the GDP of the country. So I'm going to just leave you with a quick video, if I could ask you to just play a video, and then I'm going to ask Khurram to come and talk to us about more of the technical aspects of once you have this data and this technology stack, or something like this, how you use that data to actually give scoring. And Dr. Osmani at the end is going to basically tell us how to ensure that this is Islamically compliant. So I think it's going to be quite interesting. If we could just play the video, please. There we go.
दुकान बॉक्स पर 1250 रुपए मौसूल हुए.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure speaking to you. I will hand you over to Khurram Saab, and I think we'll learn a lot.